let's get into issue number 4. Here's a recap. So this is our Dr. Manhattan-centric comic, where we really find out from his perspective how he became what he is today and everything that was going on in his past. We see his early life. We see his father. We see what led him to getting a PhD in atomic physics. We see him working at the Gila Flats with other scientists on atomic things of various nature. We see him meeting his girlfriend Janie Slater, the woman who has cancer, in the last issue. We see the accident that took him apart atom by atom, and we also see him kind of coming his miraculous resurrection. You know, he has this miraculous resurrection where he puts himself together over months at a time, and it's like people keep seeing this haunted fucking ghost around the Gila Flats place, and it's like really creepy. I really like that part. It's like such good horror. And we also see his public coming out. So now that he's a thing, he comes out with it, and he's like, I'm Dr. Manhattan. He doesn't say his real name. I'm Dr. Manhattan. I'm the Superman, you know, and people are like, he's the Superman and he's American. So we also see him meeting other heroes, his relationship with Janie falling apart, with his new teenage love interest, Lori. We see that whole situation unfold. We see John end the Vietnam War. We see him causing 2 deaths by ending a riot. That was right outside the gates of the White House. We see his government sponsorship that allows him to continue to operate after the Keene Act. And we also finally see him contemplating vast existential questions on Mars. You know, I mean, he's just gotten to a point where he has these really big questions, and it's like it's watching someone go from being a mortal into being a godlike being, you know, like the man who became like God. So obviously one of the most interesting things about this whole scenario, or this whole issue, is that it is non-linear. It is told in a non-linear fashion, which is a storytelling method that many people employ. Quentin Tarantino famously uses it, where he'll start you in the middle of a film, and then you're like, what's going on? And then he throws you back and forward and mixes it all up. It's a similar thing, which is really exciting. But the thing is they're not just doing it to get you excited. They're doing it because they're like, want to give you, the reader, a sense of what it would be like to be a being who lives without time. Because we find out that John perceives time differently than we do. He sees through the illusion of time. He lives in a state where the past, the present, and the future are all happening at once. What? Like, that's really intense, okay? And that's actually something that happened, again, to Paul when he became the Kwisatz Haderach in Dune. He also transcended time, and he sees the past and the present and the future, like, flowing as one, you know? Like, he sees things. I mean, yeah. So that's kind of an enlightened, like, and that's an idea that happens a lot in the occult. That's something that is an idea, like, you have reached enlightenment when you are able to see the past, present, and future all happening at once. I mean, that's also seen in the book Siddhartha, which is about a man who is trying to achieve enlightenment and does. So, and that is, you know, something that you should also check out if you're interested in enlightenment. Yeah, I think I love again, it's like, it's so fucking brilliant, you know? It's just like, this is so good. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, because I was just like, oh my god, like, let's just look at some of these pages for a second. Can we just do some fangirling? It's like, oh gosh, okay, so let me just give you some favorite panels. Let's just talk about some of my favorite panels, guys. Okay, I love this panel. This panel is so good. So you have John, and he's at the Gila Flats. He's at a bar. He's talking to Janie Slater for the first time. She is his age, at least, maybe older. I feel like she's possibly an older woman because she is more confident, and she even says that he's young. She's like, you're young for an assistant, whatever, you know? So that would make me think that she is older than he is. But he says when she's talking to him, well, you know, my dad sort of pushed me into it. That happens to me a lot. Other people seem to make all my moves for me. And then she goes, I'll bet. Can I get you a drink? And then she buys him a beer, and he's like, this is the first time a woman has ever bought me a beer, you know. And it's hilarious because he's like, oh, other people make all my moves for me. And then she immediately is like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think you're a hot piece. I'll make the move for you, weirdo. You know, he's a little bit of a space brain. He's a little bit of a space brain. But the thing is that it's one line. I mean, it's like, it's not just talking about like hookups, you know, he's not just talking about that. He's also talking about in his whole life. And this is a theme. This is a pattern. He is somewhat aware of a theme in his life where he is pushed around the board, where he isn't making his own moves, that he is more of a detached observer rather than an active figure in his own life. I mean, you see how his dad pushed him into doing getting into atomic physics, you know, and working on nuclear stuff. Janie makes the first move. You see her. He gets caught up with the U.S. government after the accident, and he just kind of goes with it, you know, like they just kind of be like, hey, you're our guy. And he's just like, okay. The newspapers start calling him a crime fighter. So he's like, well, I guess I have to go fight crime now, you know? And it's just, he kind of like his whole life, like that is something that happens to him. You know, America asked him like, hey, you need to win us the fucking Vietnam War. And Nixon's like, can you go over there and win it for us? He's like, I guess so, you know, and he does it. And then now, instead of leaving the planet of his own volition, it's like he's had this media conspiracy takedown that has pushed him off the board, like has also made him make another move, which is interesting because you think someone, so, you know, being a lowly, not enlightened person, you'd think, oh, if I had godlike powers, I would do everything, you know, I would save this person, I would go back in time and kill that person, and I would do all this stuff, and you'd think you'd do all this stuff, but really that's not what enlightenment, you wouldn't be enlightened then, you know. It's like, because when you get to that point, like, you're just like, I can't interfere, I'm not helping people. You see the whole picture, and you see that if you help somebody in these certain ways, you're not really helping them at all, you're just making them weak, and that if you really love them, you have to just hands off, you know, you just have to kind of let them do what they're going to do. And that is a higher perspective. And that's something that him and Janie get in a fight about. Like, Janie's like, wait a minute, they've like, after JFK is shot, you know, he mentioned something like he knew that it was going to happen. And she's like, wait a minute, you knew this was going to happen and you could have stopped this and you didn't? What is your problem? Like, what the fuck is your problem? And he's just like, it's not my thing, you know, like, it's just like, I can't stop. And that's another thing, is like, he can't necessarily stop all these things that are happening to him anyways, too. It's like, he just sees them. That doesn't mean he's able to necessarily stop them or change them. And that's kind of what he's talking about in the last panel. And then we get to the Einstein quote. But before we get in the Einstein quote, I want to talk about page 134. This is another one of my favorites. I love that Dr. Manhattan, though, is just like, he's kind of on the spectrum, you know? He's just like, his brain works in a different way, and he's super smart, but he's just like not really good socially. But another panel that I was like really struck by in this issue was this bottom one on page 134. He says, I'm walking through Grand Central Station with Lori. We stop at the newsstand and buy a copy of Time magazine commemorating Hiroshima week. And you see them here, like, buying a deal, and they're going through Grand Central Station, which, by the way, when you think of Grand Central Station, you think of a giant fucking clock. I mean, isn't there like some giant fucking clock in Grand Central Station? Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just making that up, but I feel like that's a thing. But that's a place where, like, trains run on time. It's a place where time runs, you know, and he's walking through Grand Central Station with Lori. He's walking through time with Lori. And in the foreground, you see this father and this daughter, you know, and it's like, they're just in the background. Like, well, why are these two randos taking up this much space? You know, that's a lot of fucking real estate. That's a lot of real estate that these two randos are taking up. But it's not, they're not randos. They're like, an archetype for what's going on with Lori and John. You know, it's like you have a father and his daughter, and he, like, she's a little teddy bear, you know, and he's like, oh, I'm with Lori and we get a magazine, you know, and it's like, it's the same thing, you know, it's the same relationship. Like, his relationship with Lori is very fatherly. And it makes sense. Like, so in this comic, we finally see him and Lori getting together, like when they were not Minutemen, but when they were crime busters. And let's see, let's show it off here. There we go. So we got some smooches going on here. We got some hot makeouts. And, you know, and then his girl finds out about it. And it's like, oh, my God, what is she, 14, 15, you fucking pig, you disgusting piece of shit, you know. Meanwhile, Laurie is 16. And he's like, how old? You know, like, I mean, he hasn't aged at all. But he should be like, I don't know, maybe 39 or something. So he's like a 40-year-old guy. And he's fucking around with a 16-year-old. Which, yeah, I mean, it seems... from a normal person's perspective, that's fucked up and gross. That is fucked up and gross and weird. But from his perception, from Dr. Manhattan's perception, it's not gross at all. You know, he's just like, he would want to start a relationship with a girl as young as possible to not be a creep, you know. But that means he gets way more time with her before she catches up to him, you know, because Janie passed him up really fucking quick. Like, Janie was his age or maybe a little bit older. And within a decade, it was over. You know, within a decade, it was over. And so by him dating Silk Spectre, you got a 16-year-old. It's going to take her, you know, 14 years to become 30, you know, to even catch up to you and what you look like. It's going to take her that long. And then after that, you still got a few years after that, you know. And that's the thing is, like, John is more enlightened than everybody. It doesn't matter if he dates a woman who's 16 or a woman who's 40 or 50 or whatever the fuck, because he's going to be above them. He's going to be above them. He's not on the same level with them. Like, it's not going to work that way. So he's already kind of in that daddy position. Like, he's already in the daddy position. Like, he can't date any woman who's his peer. So you might as well just get with a girl that you can stay with for as long as possible. And obviously Laurie was into it. I mean, Laurie wasn't like some victim here. Like, Laurie was like, yes, look at this hot fucking blue perfect man. Like, and I think it's cute too that they go on patrol together, because of course they would. I mean, she really can't defend herself. She's a 16-year-old girl. Like, of course they pair her up with the Superman, because he'll make sure that nothing ever happens to her. And she also just like is 16-year-old, open-minded, is like, this shit's weird. Okay. Like, she doesn't judge him, like an older person does. She doesn't have the hangups that older people do. Yeah, but the thing, okay, but here's the thing. And this is something you see in real life a lot. You see older men who find a younger woman, you know, and marry them, date them, whatever, and stay with them. And they're kind of in this more fatherly-like position. And also, Dr. Manhattan doesn't have kids of his own. So it's like, well, it would make sense that you'd want to, you know, you kind of have that. Like, you still go through that to some degree. But the thing about, like, the daddy situation, you know, relationship, is eventually the woman does grow up. You know, eventually she isn't a child anymore. Eventually she doesn't want to be baby anymore. And that's when things fall apart. You know, when the woman goes from being a young woman into blossoming into full adulthood, and she no longer accepts being treated as a child, you know. And that's when that relationship a lot of times falls apart. Now, sometimes there's some people that always want to be baby, but there's definitely like a lot of women kind of grow out of it, and then the relationship falls apart. And that's what happened to John, you know, and that's what happened to John. Now I want to end on this wonderful Einstein quote. And if you've noticed, and I haven't talked about this before, but at the end of every issue of the Watchmen, there is an appropriate quote from our media, from our, you know, people, like a Bob Dylan verse. Now we have an Einstein quote, like real quotes from real people in our universe and these things. And in this one, you see Einstein's quote says, "The release of atomic power has changed everything, except our way of thinking. The solution to this problem lies in the heart of mankind. If only I had known, I should have become a watchmaker." And that ties obviously perfectly in with our man John, who wanted to be a watchmaker, who watched his father throw out all of his little gears that he was working on. And I think that what Einstein is trying to say is that, so obviously his theorems and his thinking really advanced it advances technologically enormously. You know, I mean, we started making fucking nuclear bombs based on his suggestion that we should start making nuclear bombs because there's some German scientists. But the problem is that even though he helped us become far more technologically advanced, he saw that humanity's spiritual advancement was not climbing in step with his with our technological advancement. And that's a problem. Like, there is an inherent danger when that happens. I mean, that's what Black Mirror is about. is when your technology advances, but you don't, philosophically and spiritually. And so you're like, you have to, it's like giving a child a loaded gun, you know, it's like giving a kid a loaded gun. Like that's what technology can be if people aren't advanced enough to be able to use it properly. And so he, you know, Einstein sees his part in the birth of the atomic bomb. And he was really bummed that it got used on Hiroshima. I think he really regretted his involvement with it. And he even campaigned for a ban on nuclear weapons later. Like he was like, we need to not make these. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. And his theory of relativity and other fucking theorems, like they opened up this Pandora's box of modern physics. You know, I mean, he's like the father of modern physics. And he granted us all these new ways of looking at time, space, matter, energy, gravity. His ideas led to quantum physics, opened up quantum physics. He's like the grandfather, I guess, of quantum physics. But the thing is, he was like super not stoked on the quantum stuff. Like he was like, when he got to the quantum stuff, he was like, oh, fuck this shit. Like, I don't like this shit. Like, fuck, you know? And he wasn't able to ever square his, you know, the quantum shit with like his shit up here. He was trying to work on this theory of everything and he just couldn't figure it out. And it kind of drove him crazy, you know, it kind of drove him crazy and like bummed him out. And so I think he's also saying like, if I had been a watchmaker, like why did he choose the watchmaker? Why would you want to be a watchmaker? Well, watchmaker, it's like making a watch. It's straightforward, predictable, understandable, time, linear, you know, it's linear. It doesn't drive you crazy. It's like, it doesn't take you to the abyss, you know, you just follow time and your life and your mind can be simple and linear and chill. He would have kind of, there's a part of him that lamented the loss of that ability of just to have a normal, simple, linear life, you know, because he got so deep into the math that he stared into the abyss and the abyss stared back and he got a little like weirded out by it. But that's also what happened to John. That's exactly what happened to John. Like John wanted to be a watchmaker. He wanted a linear, simple, forward situation, and his father came in, ruined it all for him. He ends up becoming the Superman. He lives a non-linear time life, you know, his life is super nuts, and he's sad about it. Like he mourns the loss of his simple perceptions and being this extrasensory being. It's fucking super bummer. Like he is this thing, he accepts being it, and he accepts doing it, but it doesn't make it easier for him. And also, I think it was really fun in page 114 here. Okay. Page 114, we have him hanging out with Wally. And, you know, Wally brings up Einstein. He's like, oh, you know, John's like, oh, well, I've seen him lecture. And Wally says that he hears that, you know, Einstein argues with his wife like crazy. And he's like joking, like, even a genius couldn't figure women out. And John replies, well, I guess he's human like everyone else. But hilariously, John transcends humanity and still can't figure women out. I thought that was so good. I laughed so hard. I was just like, yes, like, super funny to me. Because like, I guess he's human. And it's like, the thing is, though, is the fact that John still can't figure Laurie out, being a transcended being, is his last tie to humanity. Is confusion. Being human is confusion, and like that's the only thing he's still fucking confused on. It's the only thing that keeps him from being this ultimate detached, omnipotent being, you know. So that Tyson brings up a good point. What does that say about our man Alan Moore, you know? Yeah, I'm sure that Alan feels that way to a degree. Yeah, Alan feels that way to a degree.
Two women dish him at the same time.
Yeah, well, yeah, Alan, like, I mean, Alan's so fucking ahead of the curve. Like, Alan is so fucking ahead of the curve. And Alan's like, he's definitely highly, like, a intellectual giant. You know, I would call him an intellectual giant, and he does look down on a lot of people. A lot of us are fucking monkeys to him, you know, and you can tell in the way he speaks that he is kind of an elitist and he thinks he's smarter than everybody, but it's because he fucking is, you know, it's like because he is. But it's very isolating to be like that. It's even though it's like you have this higher vantage point, it's very isolating. But even then, your higher vantage point doesn't make you any cooler or like make your relationships any less of a fucking mess, you know. And even though he was more enlightened to where he was able to have a polyamorous relationship with two women. He had two women for a while. They were raising all the kids together. Everything was great. Eventually, both women just left him, and they stayed together, and then they left him together. So it's like, he's got to deal with that stuff too. He's like, oh, I brought all this shit, I made this shit happen, and then they fucking leave me. Like, I'm sure he totally felt like Dr. Manhattan on Mars, and with that little photograph, just like, fuck, you know, fuck. So, all right, guys, that's kind of it for my stuff here. Kind of it for my stuff here for Watchmen Club Session 2. Next, we're going to get into some Q&A, but I'm going to take a quick break first. I'm going to, take some sips of some water. And then when we come back, we are going to start with a new video about Alan Moore. We're going to talk a little bit. Let's watch more Alan Moore videos. Papa Moore, get to know Daddy better. And then we're going to take some questions I have for my patrons. I'm going to take some questions first from my Patreon. And then we'll be taking some questions from the audience, from you out there on Twitch. Welcome back. Thank you guys for hanging out, continuing to hang out. So, as promised, I'm going to roll this beautiful bean footage of Alan Moore, and then we're going to discuss that for just a second. Here we go.
My name's Alan Moore. I write comics. When I started in comics 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't get no respect. It was a case where comics were seen as a juvenile medium where they were throwaway items. They were just cheap four-colour trash. That's changed. Over the last 4 or 5 years, you've had comics done on every subject from sort of homosexual rights to the Holocaust in the Second World War. The range of subject matter has widened immensely. We are actually dealing with adult stories now. So listen here, you dandified git. Just who the hell do you think you are? I'm Alan Moore. I'm a comic book messiah for the 1990s. And having risen from my humble Terrace Street origins and having survived my tenure as one of the Dole Q millions, I've now become a successful small businessman of no mean repute, and I believe that this is the face of success in Mrs. Thatcher's Britain. You mean somebody actually pays you? You make a living out of all this? What the hell do you do? I do comics. I do, well, any sort of writing pertaining to comics.
Comic writer then? You just write comics?
Oh, I write comics, and I consider that to be as worthy as any other form of endeavour. You wouldn't have said to Stravinsky that he just did music.
Oh, so it's art, is it? You're a purveyor of culture. Well, what is this art that we should be thanking you for, then?
Yeah, I'd say it was art. Comics, on the other hand, are a little bit better than most art, because any kid who's got 30 pence in his pocket, 40 pence, can go down to the corner newsagents and buy a piece of work that people have put a lot of honest endeavour into. It's not something that you have to have a sort of a charge account to appreciate. It's not something that you need a vast education in the classics to appreciate. It's something that is within reach of anybody.
There you have it. There you have it. The man, the myth, the legend, the elitist wizard, Alan Moore. This guy, he really is one of a kind. You're right. Darren Darkholm. I also love this elitist wizard. I think he's pretty special. And I mean, and that just goes to show you how much like he cares and he understands his medium. He's like, this is a medium that the general masses can enjoy. Poor kids and rich kids alike, children can get it. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a bunch of, you don't have to have a degree in art to appreciate it, and you can reach a lot of people through comic books, and you can influence a lot of children through comic books, and also adults too. But I mean, Alan Moore is very aware of his readership, and he very much wants to influence young minds into thinking in broader terms. And he uses his platform to try to make everyone else smarter, to bring everybody else up to his level. And yeah, it's probably because he's really frustrated because he thinks everybody's stupid. But still, like, it's the impetus. It's fine. Like, I'm just glad that he's out there, like, trying to pull us all up, you know, like, pull us up just a little bit. And he did. I mean, he did with Watchmen. He pulled up a whole fucking industry, you know. It's like, this guy is, like, got some powerful magic on his side. I have so much respect for him. And I believe, T-Bone, is Monsters, Maniacs, and More, is that on YouTube? Can people...
It is available on YouTube, yes.
It is available on
You
YouTube.
have to find 4 parts, though. There's not one clip.
Okay, so there's not one clip of this. There's 4 parts. So you kind of have to
It's an amazingly
find it.
well-made 1987 documentary.
Yes,
on comic books.
yes. This was a 1987 documentary on Alan Moore and his comics. But this is also like when Alan Moore was riding high.
Oh, yeah.
This was before the fall. This was him with like the most swag. The most swag before DC cut the fucking rug out from under him and fucking pissed him off and just like ruined everything, you know? Like, this is peak Moore. I feel like, I mean, it's just at a peak. I mean, I think he continues to peak in different ways. But that is one of his peaks, and it's really amazing to see how much swag he has in this documentary. You can see how playful he is, you know, and I know that he's a very intimidating character. In my mind, he's a very intimidating character, but watching this documentary, you see the human side of him, which I thought was really cute.
I also realized what a theatrical performer he is.
Yes,
on camera.
he's also a very theatrical performer. He likes being on stage. There's a part of him that loves being on stage.
I'm even tempted to think that he possibly directed a lot of his own bits in this documentary.
Oh yeah. Tyson believes he directed a lot of his own bits, which I'm sure he did. I mean, he a comic book writer is essentially a film director, except on the page. It's very similar. Like the similar thought processes. You're creating a linear story, you know, through images and words. It's the same shit. So yeah. But also, just letting you know, maybe next week we'll have these guys ready. We'll have our big cartel site, and you can get some Watchmen Club t-shirts if you're interested. You know, one thing I'm going to do, actually, I'm really excited about this. So, like, in the Watchmen pack, you can get, like, this iron-on robot patch, you know, comedian patch. And so I'm going to do a tutorial next week where... Because I think a lot of you guys don't know how to iron on a patch. I've seen some people who've sewn it on already, which maybe that looks better, but you can just iron it on. You don't have to sew it on, dude. Like, I got it to where you didn't have to do that shit. Like, I hate sewing patches on stuff. So, but you have to put, like, a little piece of fabric over it. So I'm going to, like, I think I'm going to, like, put it right here, and then I'll have this really cool robot patch on. So if you guys have a robot patch, then this is a perfect place to put it. Perfect place to put it. Well, yeah, I'm going to iron it on camera, but I'm not going to do it during the club. I'm just going to do that later, and then we'll just show you.
No, I need a tutorial. I need to see you do it.
Well, yeah, we can film a tutorial. It doesn't have to be live tutorial. We can film a tutorial.
A lot of guys are afraid of irons.
Yeah, Tyson says a lot of guys are afraid of irons, and so am I. Honestly, I don't really know what I'm doing with one either that much. I just kind of use it, and I understand how glue and heat works.
The first time I used it,
I understand how glue...
Right through my shirt.
Tyson says that he burned a hole right through his shirt the first time he ironed something, which doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me. But yeah, it's like there's just glue on the back of this, and when you heat it up, the glue gets sticky, and then it bonds to the t-shirt, and then when it cools, it's bonded together. It's super easy, you know. So, but also our Watchmen packs are still available. Which, by the way, the Watchmen pack does not include the graphic novel. A lot of people are getting really confused. That was the Watchmen box, and we sold out of that. Like, it was like, that's done with. So, but if you want to support the class, you can get the pack, and the pack has all the swag in it, minus the book. So you can get the Doomsday Clock pen. We got this guy, bookmark. It's really thick. Like, I'm so happy with how this turned out. Like, my last one I kind of felt bad about because it was not thick enough. And then we got these stickers. I got bracelets. Got my bracelets on. So, yeah, and then you can get your patch. Fucking rock it. But that's on bigcartel.cbgmeteam.com. Or you can, you know, if you want to support, you can become a Patreon member. Or you could just subscribe to this channel here. There's so many ways. I give you guys so many ways, you know? Everybody's different. Everybody wants different things.